Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, Aaron Gehrke and Kevin Bender are engaging in a conversation about humility, vulnerability, surrendering in the presence of God, especially when difficult situations arise in life. We sort of have two roads to take. One will double down and grind it out and just kind of keep on keeping on, or we can take that as a learning moment to turn to God and say, Lord, I need you in this moment. I can't do this without you. And so we'll take a look at humility and also talk about the fall of Jerusalem and Judah in chapter 17 in the story. So as always, we hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey, Kevin.
What a thud.
Let's try that again. Oh, man.
A little better. It's my Yeti, man.
Yeah, you should get a real mug like me.
Yeah. People listening, if you can see me, you see I'm using this nice Yeti. But if you're listening, for all you know, I'm holding, one of Lily's little plastic cups.
That's right. And I got a new mug because I keep breaking my special mugs. And this one says, ask me about my dad jokes. But
there you go.
But Kevin is not going to take directions from a mug, so you do not get to hear any dad jokes.
But feel free to write in to the show. We would love that. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Actually, so I went home for lunch today.
Yeah.
And my wife had written a check to this guy named Bill, and I needed to put it in the mail. And so my kids were going, "Yep, you got to mail that to $1 bill." I was like, yes!
You're like, Dad, jokes are hereditary. This is great.
I love it.
The next generation.
Because I started that one time at dinner. Well, I forget. They might have made up the dollar bill thing. But I think I said to them, I don't know. Somebody said, that makes sense. I understand. That makes sense. And I was like, and dollars. So now my kids, they're riffing off of that one, and it's getting some good traction.
That's good. How's Abby handling all of this?
She bought me the mug, man.
Oh yeah, she's got only herself to blame.
She even bought me a dad joke game where you have to
no way
face off and tell each other dad jokes, and then whoever laughs loses. So she's secretly a fan.
All right.
Even though she may not express it openly, but it's endearing.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Oh man, well, it's good to be on the couch with you again. I still have this little cough. I think some of it's psychological, but
it's like when you have an itch that you really want to scratch, and you're like, "Is this thing even real?"
Yeah.
Is it just my body playing tricks on my mind?
Yeah. I don't know. I was fortunate enough to be able to preach yesterday and make it through 2 services and 2 sermons, and somehow hardly coughed at all. So I was praying fervently to just make it through. But right now I have this tickle, and I'm so sorry, but I'm going to cough one more time.
Yeah, go for it. I'll give you 77 more times.
I think I'm already at more than I was last week. Oh well. It's because I'm actually drinking coffee this week instead of water, probably.
It is an expectorant.
What's that?
I don't know. That's just what Molly tells me. It's from what I understand, it opens up your lungs.
Coffee does?
Uh-huh. So if you're having any sort of congestion, it will help clear you out, but it might encourage the clearing out of yourself, maybe. I might be taking, I got to say this here, because I got to say it to some group of people that maybe was, watching the service Sunday, but I called turtles amphibians.
Yeah.
They're not.
I was wondering.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
They're reptiles.
Right. What's an amphibian? Just cold-blooded?
No. So an amphibian is something that, can breathe on land and in water. And you tell me what animal can do that, because I don't know. But turtles only breathe air. So
There's no animal that can breathe air and breathe underwater.
Or maybe it's they spend part of their life spend part of their life in the water and part of their life on land. That would be like frogs, right? They start as tadpoles.
Did you know that dolphins? So, like dolphins, they have to breathe through the blowhole, but they're in water the whole time.
Yeah.
You ever think about how they sleep?
No.
Half of their brain shuts off, and they like go to the surface and like paddle with one side.
Whoa. All right. They're like sleepwalkers.
Yeah.
Sleep swimmers.
Sleep swimmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. No, didn't know that. You have humbled me,
Wow.
Aaron. You've humbled me in this conversation. I've humbled. Well, I shouldn't say I've humbled myself. Molly humbled me.
Yeah.
After the.
She was like, no, you
She's
were
like,
wrong.
yeah, well, her mom's a teacher too, and then I heard from her mom later that day that turtles are not amphibians. So now I really know.
Well, I did the same thing with animals one time. I still have not fact checked this, but I was preaching about creation in general and casting this whole vision of how all of creation sings God's praises. And so I was mentioning like the wind whistling through the trees and giving all this artistic language and then trying to be funny. I was like, and you can imagine that the giraffes sing the very long notes or whatever. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said that giraffes don't have vocal cords.
Whoa.
Because their neck is actually too long.
Wow.
And I always forget to fact check that. So,
hey, project for later today.
I guess.
And explains why when I read Lily's children's books,
Yeah.
I can never. I do a sound for the lion. I do a sound for
You
the
don't know
monkey.
what the giraffe says.
But yeah, the giraffe comes up. I'm like, I don't know.
Man, we have our homework cut out. We got to figure out what an amphibian actually is. If giraffes do have vocal cords.
And what the best joke of the day is.
What the best joke of the day is. Maybe we should just move on to the theme of the day.
Let's do that. Yeah.
You already tried to transition us, but talking about
It's been a
humility,
while.
yeah.
You're back on the couch. You're too cozy.
Oh man. So yeah, I preached on Sunday. We're at this part of the story in chapter 17 where there's the fall of Jerusalem because of the faithlessness of God's people, and as we have it recorded, in particular the kings who are really, I don't know, I guess I just see them as selfish and prideful and arrogant and I mean just downright wicked. Like, I mean, they don't listen to the prophets. They just kind of do whatever they want to do, which flies in the face of what God wants them to do. And so there's this kind of, I think what we're going to find out as the story unfolds is that this exile, this destruction of Jerusalem, it's a defining moment for the people of Israel. It's either they're going to be humbled by this, kind of repent, change their ways, and set their sights back on God, or they're going to just keep going down the same road that they've been on and completely reject their faith in God. So, spoiler alert: the former, happens. So, I mean, there is a group of people who are faithful to God, and
Right.
And God will continue to work through them, and we'll see them in future weeks. But
Right, but probably not all of the Israelites, right? Probably not all of them come back.
oh no,
I gotta believe that there are, some like you would talk about where, it's kind of been a process in the works already, and this is kind of it's the old frog boiling story, if you've heard that, right?
Yeah.
Where you can stick a frog in I guess I've never done this. There's the third thing to fact check. If you put a frog in a pot, of water,
Yeah.
if the water's boiling, the frog will just hop out.
Yeah.
He's not gonna stay in. But if you put a frog in a pot of just nice water, warm water, and then you slowly turn the heat up, allegedly it will not jump out
Right.
and will literally get cooked.
Right.
Like he will die.
Right.
And that's such a good metaphor for how these, like what we see in Judah and with these kings and with the people, that there is this kind of a slow fade that's a real danger to us when it's like, the water's warm, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Like when you have a clear voice, God telling you, no, this is not good for you. Please listen to me. Please trust me.
Right.
And, they say, I don't know about that.
Right.
And then slowly and slowly, it's more and more and more. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then until you do hit that, kind of point of destruction.
Right.
And that's, I think in life we have those points too. And it's kind of like, I got to wake up. I got to make a change.
Right.
Or you just double down and you're like, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't know.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Right.
So
that's where, on the podcast last week, I shared a little bit kind of about what's been, I think I shared briefly about, dealing with COVID and stuff, but in my sermon, I coupled that with kind of other stuff that we've been dealing with in our home with health issues for our kids and home issues, kind of doing some mold remediation, and all of this was happening at the same time, and it was just sort of this like, whew, man, there's a lot, God, almost just too much to bear. I mean, I got emotional a lot, like thinking about it, and not like a woe is me emotionality, but like from the depths of the junk that we were kind of dealing with, and kind of how crummy I actually felt about it, like in terms of the sickness and also not being able to be at home, but then this like overwhelming I don't know if joy is the right word, but gratitude, thankfulness to the people who were surrounding us and lifting us up and caring for us and supporting us. And it's just like, oh, like that. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it leaves you kind of just sort of speechless. Like, I know I mentioned on the podcast last week, like, I'm a kind of guy when I like challenging things. I like, I don't know, I like having a lot of stuff on my plate. I don't know, I just like having to handle a lot of stuff and be responsible for things and go after more and more stuff. I don't know, it's just the way that I'm wired. And I think there was, I don't think I mentioned this in my sermon, but I think there's a lot of that also in my life, like saying yes to a lot of things, a lot of good opportunities, a lot of things to be involved in, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I think it just all sort of hit, like, it's too much, Aaron. Like, just, chill out for a minute, rest, and refocus, like just listen to me. It's that word from God, So this whole thing of like being humbled and vulnerable and dependent on other people and on God and stuff, it's just that like necessary wake up call, I think, but like you said, there is a different attitude or a different path that I could have taken,
Sure.
Instead of that path of faith and gratitude and humility, I could have taken the path of, gotta just grind it out,
Yeah.
just keep going, I don't think that's a healthy way to go, physically or spiritually.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's so neat to see how when we open ourselves up to being carried kind of by others, or to being helped, like it grants this neat opportunity for other people to come in, and it's like you really embody community, right?
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
I was talking to my dad, who's a pastor and has been for a long time, and he said he's had to counsel a number of people who like didn't want other people's help, and actually has said to those people, you are actually being selfish in this moment, and you are depriving people who have the gift of helping and have that spiritual gift and desire to help other people in need. And you're depriving them of the opportunity to use their spiritual gifts, to care for you, and so that's like, so my dad was kind of sharing that with me too, and I know that, and like, it's not that I don't want to receive help. It's just like, I don't know. There's just that sometimes there's that fine line of like,
Right.
do I really need it? I don't know. And I also have a little bit of pride of like, well, I kind of want to take care of this myself. I don't know. It's like, but I had this realization. I said it kind of as a joke or lighthearted statement in my sermon about like the drywall at my house. Like I had we had a whole bunch of drywall that needed to be done in my home, like after we did this mold remediation. And I was thinking originally, I'll just go back home and pop in and do the drywall and get all painted and stuff. And I've had to do some drywall patching at my house. It's very frustrating to me. I don't enjoy it. I'm not that good at it. I end up like, it doesn't look that smooth and stuff, and I notice it later, and I'm like, so it's just like that kind of stuff where it's like, yeah, it's okay to have other people help me with this that want to help and are good at that. It sounds so simple to say,
Sure, yeah.
but to actually get to the
moment.
place,
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
To be that, I don't know, at least for me, like just to be that vulnerable and needy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's, that is hard to admit. And, it's like some of this stuff is, like you say, like being just hardwired in a certain way, right? Like we all have different styles or personalities and our ways of being. And that's like fine, it's like there's nothing wrong with that, right? And there's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with like had you gone for it and tried to do the drywall yourself, you know what I mean? It's not like God would be down there, like frustrated or something with you. But I think that there does seem to be like an analogy with, we are needy, you know what I mean? Like as humans, like we are dependent on God for everything,
right?
And we don't always like to acknowledge that,
right?
Or it's hard to acknowledge,
right? But then also being dependent on other people too.
Yeah.
And I think, we just take so much stuff for granted. If you think about it, like in terms of our dependence on other people. We're both drinking coffee right now. Like, I didn't grow any coffee beans.
Or package into a tiny little Keurig cup.
Yeah, so you just like trace all of that stuff, like all the hands and brilliance and hard work and stuff that it took all along the way for you and I to make a simple cup of coffee. It's like, I'm not dependent on having a cup of coffee right now. I wanted one, but like but just, I don't know, you just think about that. Like it's pretty cool to think about how God has, united his people in that sort of way, to be dependent on one another and to care for and serve one another. It's quite remarkable if you think about it. Like, I believe God orchestrates that whole thing, because we are ultimately dependent on him for everything, like you just said. So
yeah. Well, and I think too, there's something, humility is ingrained in community, right? Like you can't, if a person is so prideful, like sounds like Manasseh may have been this king, right, at the time, but like, if you become too prideful, you'll never really let others into your world. Either people will become like something to be used for your own, agenda or plan or whatever, or they'll be kind of useless to you, right? And that's like so like people's value ends up becoming, well, what can they offer me, in pride. But, if we humble ourselves and realize like, oh no, like I need somebody else, I don't know, there's something humbling about that. And it kind of, I guess it just helps decenter ourselves from being just too focused on me or my little castle, my little world. We live, so like our world today, we do live, even though it's so interconnected, it's not obvious. Like I've had a lot of cups of coffee, since I've been here. This is probably the first time I've ever even thought about you know, what it took for this cup of coffee to come into my hand.
Okay.
You know, and I mean, we can sit in our homes and click, you know, on Amazon and do everything, and it just kind of shows up, and you don't have to think about it.
Right.
Or I go to the supermarket and I go get my, you know, my eggs and my meat and my, you know, veggies, and I don't think about all the effort that was put into that.
Right.
But back, you know, like in an earlier day, that would have been much more transparent.
Yeah.
You know, like you'd have known your farmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think it is helpful to remember, like, community. I mean, it just exists in general. You know, like we are part of community just by existing.
Right.
And God's kind of webbed us. But then here in the church, we even have a community that's built upon, well, Jesus,
Right.
and His death and resurrection, and that gives us much more of a reason even beyond our usefulness to be in community.
Yeah. And with Christ, I mean, the way that I love to think about it, and this is Philippians 2 language, where you know, God took the form of a human, you know, being born in our likeness, and he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And so it's this image of God who is big and almighty and powerful, like humbling himself to the lowest place in humanity, which, you know, the death sentence of a criminal, right? But he does that in order to lift us up. And so I see it as, you know, Jesus comes to be the lowest, so that he can lift up even the least and the lowliest and the weak, and you know, exalt us, basically, raise us up. And so there's this reality. I mean, and Paul talks about it in Philippians, that we also ought to embody that same sort of humility by thinking of others more often than we think of ourselves. And so in humbling ourselves, I think we actually take on we take on Christ-likeness, because we kind of go underneath others to lift them up, and we're underneath others to lift them up, all the while Christ is below all of us, lifting all of us up, you know, collectively. And I think that's a beautiful image. Like, you know, Christ will always lift you up. He will always give you life. He will give you eternal life. Like, so you have no worry in humbling yourself. You know, like,
you can't go lower than him.
Yeah. So, like, that's I think, you know, that's my point. That's my point.
Not to say it isn't hard, though, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like that humbling aspect.
Yeah.
Like a comment.
Or vulnerability in front of other people or whatever, you know.
And I've heard the notion, you know, a time or two of, like, you know, God will never give you anything you can't handle. And I don't know if I agree with that, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, He'll never give me anything He can't handle.
Yeah. But
there might be some stuff that I can't, you know.
Yeah.
And, like, that'll be hard.
Yeah.
That'll be hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in context, the scripture is actually talking about temptation. Like, I won't let you be tempted beyond what you can handle is actually
in Corinthians.
In Corinthians. And he says also, like, if it seems like it's more than you can handle, he'll also provide a way out for you. So a lot of people take that out of context and phrase it not quite as Paul intended it.
Yeah.
That they sort of just say, yeah, God won't ever give you more than you can handle. And yeah, I hear what you're saying though too. Like that can also lead to this place of, like, well, I guess I'm good. Like, I'll just take it all on, you know, because God's not going to give me more than I can handle. You know.
Yeah.
And if he won't, you know, there's some wisdom, I think, that we're called to put into practice in our own lives, and discretion. You know, like I'm trying to say in my own life, of this kind of forced humility, where it's sort of like a reevaluation of time and priorities and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about the old Jews there in Judah, as far as the destruction of
Yeah.
Jerusalem and the temple and everything that was coming. I don't think they were ready to handle that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember too that like God is sending this.
Yeah.
God is sending this. And sometimes we're tempted to think like when there's disaster, like that God's abandoned us or something, that he's not in it. And that would be far worse
Yeah.
than God actually being there in the midst of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Now, whether we humble ourselves and listen to God in those tough moments is a question. But we should never imagine that any suffering that we go through or endure means that God is not near us or with us.
Oh, no.
Right.
No. I think the scriptures teach us the opposite, that when we suffer, especially when we suffer like Christ or on account of Christ, that's probably when we're actually closest to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would understand that reality,
Yeah.
that when you're actually humbled through the difficulties, it's probably the moments, and listeners, you can probably think of moments in your own life where your relationship with God or God's voice is probably actually the clearest, in those difficult moments, which is a hard reality to sometimes deal with or grasp, but I think we know that we know it's true, that in those moments of difficulty, in those moments of stress or whatever, like that is when we turn to God in those moments.
Yeah.
That's when we humble ourselves, when we're vulnerable and dependent on him, and that's when he goes, yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah.
I'll lift you up.
Uh-huh.
And that's
I
beautiful.
really like that line that you had in the sermon, and I saw it again in the email this morning. But that it's like that moment that you're in, and then you say like, Lord, I need you, And it's like, even thinking in my own life, like the times, it's interesting sometimes how long it takes for me to get to those words, And it's like he's there the whole time.
I know.
Like he's there the whole time, and he's there with the people in Israel the whole time, But man, like sometimes
I got it. God, I don't.
Like, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah.
I get frustrated.
Yeah.
It's like I'll do it. But I've been I don't know. That's really struck me. Or it struck me when you said it anyway in your sermon. Just that moment, because there are those clear defining moments in life when it's just like like everything is so far gone or so far out of control, and it's like only you can fix this. This is, I'm too far gone. Only you can fix this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me kind of speak from the heart and share what's going on in life. I tend to share, little bits of my life and all that kind of stuff. But it's not that it's hard to speak like that, but sometimes I struggle, like how much of the sermon should just be my life being poured out, and how much should be teaching and instruction in God's word and stuff. But I felt it necessary to kind of take it another level and spend some time just sharing and being open and vulnerable and demonstrating that, to also make the point that's what we ought to be doing in God's presence and with one another as well, in the Christian community. So so thanks for letting me do that. And listeners, if you haven't listened to the sermon, hopefully you get a chance to, and maybe it'll resonate with you as well. So
well, it's good to have you back, man.
And I think this does set the stage well, though, for where we're going to be going even next week and the weeks after, as we're dealing with these people now in exile. It's sort of like, I don't know, it's the come to Jesus moment, of like, what path will they choose, and we won't get ahead of ourselves. So, but keep reading the story and keep tracking along with us, and look forward to continuing this conversation. So, Kevin, as always, it was good to rock the flannel with you too.
Yeah,
I think
man.
we're colorful today. So.
Yeah, I like it.
Hey, peace to you.
Peace, brother.